Hello and welcome back to another video. Today is all about comparing Fujifilm's Provia 100F to Kodak's Ektachrome 100. They're really similar films. They're both daylight balanced, 100 speed slide film. So there is a comparison to be made there. I shot one roll of each down by Eastbourne, by the sort of Beachy Head cliffs in the southeast of the UK. And I did it by essentially leaving this Hasselblad on a tripod, loading one back of each film and then metering, shooting, taking the back off, swapping it for the other film. And in that way, I've got a very direct comparison. I went into this having shot quite a lot of Provia myself and not really tried Ektachrome since its re-release. So I was more familiar with Provia, but I actually ended up slightly preferring Ektachrome. I just think that the color rendition is a little warmer and a little nicer. Let's have a look at some pictures and you can sort of accompany me. I did also have some film footage from Eastbourne, so you can kind of, true to my format, have a look at how I shot it and also the pictures. For the whole video, I'll put both of them on film side by side, so you know which one's which and you can do your own comparisons. So if at any point you're thinking, oh, what's he done here? Just pause, have a look. I'll make sure I zoom in at some points so that you can get a kind of a better look at the detail each film captures. Although, spoiling it, there's really no difference in the detail. They were scanned by a lab, so I don't know, maybe I could eke out a little bit more detail if I took it and had it drum scanned. But yeah, come on, have a look at the pictures and maybe by the end of the video, you will also have a favorite between the two similar films. I usually drive to these things, but this time we decided to take the train. Myself and Charlie, who was helping me with the filming, we sat in peace, blasting through the English countryside, and I took the opportunity to load my film backs. When we got there, we pretty much made a beeline straight for the pier. It is the most famous sort of standout landmark of Eastbourne. And here's my first shot. Developed by the same lab, presumably in the same dip dunk tank or whatever. I am immediately drawn to the Ektachrome, just because of how the stones look, that slight warmth to the foreground. Let's have a little zoom in. Now obviously there are slight differences in the time of the exposure. It takes me maybe about 15-20 seconds to change the backs. So occasionally there'll be a slight change in the light, but it looks like the exposure is pretty much exactly the same. It just seems like there's more yellow, more kind of orange in the in the pebbles on the beach. It almost seems like there's a little bit more detail in the blue in the Provia, which I guess would suggest that it is a slightly cooler film stock. I also notice a little bit more detail in the structure supporting the pier on the Provia image. If you want to have a real close look on YouTube, I'd suggest playing it back in 2160p and pausing, but the detail is the same. It's just a little bit of color difference that I'm seeing here. Again, much the same story on the second shot. So the sky looks a bit more neutral on the Ektachrome. I think that the Provia has slightly better looking water, and it's interesting because the bottom of the bridge, or the pier rather, looks better on the Ektachrome, but there's more detail on the Provia. So it's interesting. It seems like there's a slightly deeper kind of toe to the shadow roll off on the Fujifilm. Very similar. I'd be quite hard pressed to make a real judgment here. I think I prefer the way the sky looks in the Ektachrome shot for sure. I'll try not to repeat myself too much if it's a similar story, but in this shot, I think that the blue of the sky is more pleasing on the Ektachrome. And note the hotel, or I assume it's a hotel, on the right side of the frame. The side of it that faces east is definitely brighter on the Provia shot than on the Ektachrome shot. So I've taken 3 shots, which is a quarter of a roll on the Eastbourne side. Now we're just going to walk down the beach, head down towards Beachy Head, and what I'm looking for is the iconic white cliffs and maybe the lighthouse that's just off the coast. I think that's actually Beachy Head Lighthouse, which could be quite a fun shot. Notice how different the greens are in this image. It was shot through a Ferris wheel door, so that could have something to do with it. But that warm grass in the Ektachrome shot, I prefer. Now this is interesting because I didn't change my exposure settings between taking these 2 photos, but clearly the Ektachrome shot looks like it's half a stop underexposed. It could be that a cloud obscured the sun momentarily, or perhaps the lab has something to do with it. I haven't touched these scans after receiving them, so yeah, maybe that's not something you can read too much into, although we have been seeing more shadow detail in the Provia up to this point. Let's have a zoom in and look at the colours. It's weird because to me it looks like the Ektachrome has more blue in the shadows, or I guess we could call these midtones. The Ektachrome seems a little bit more saturated, but I will say that the Provia looks a little bit more natural. It's interesting how the contrast plays out here, because in all the other shots, the Ektar has been a slightly warmer film, but because it seems that there's more shadow in the Ektachrome, which tends towards cooler, somehow the Provia is the warmer shot. Yeah, interesting. This is a good look at the greens for these particular films. So I found another scene to photograph. This one, I've got the life buoy, the blue railings, the shadows, and sort of the lines created by that. My idea here is to really have a look at how the colours come out between the 2 films. So I've got a nice saturated red, a nice saturated blue, and obviously the beach and the sea behind it. We'll see how it comes out. So I think this is my second favourite shot from the roll, and I feel this really gives you an insight into how the films treat contrast as well as red. Look at the Provia, look at the way it boosts the shadows. The Ektachrome just has a little bit more contrast in it, but then again, the Ektachrome has that warmer cast over it, which I think you can see that all over the image, but particularly in that slightly deeper red, and also the shoreline, the pebbles on the beach. I prefer the Ektachrome, but I will have to say there is a little bit more dynamic range, apparently, in the Provia. At this point, we started walking up towards Beachy Head, and almost as soon as we started to climb, the fog came in and the conditions really changed. I couldn't really record much audio up here, but essentially we had these breaks in the clouds where the view was really good, but then we'd be back in the cloud for kind of 5 minutes or so. So we got a couple of shots. Check this one out of the Beachy Head Lighthouse. Unfortunately, around this point, the comparison notion of the video kind of falls apart. Because the light levels were changing and because the sea mist was so unpredictable, I mean, you can see here the exposure on the Ektachrome looks spot on, but then what I've done is I've probably waited 3 or 4 minutes to try and take the picture on the Provia, and in that time there's a bit more sun, and actually I think that the highlight on the top left of that is just completely blown out. So I guess I like the picture, but the exposure, I should have remetered. But that, in my head, was actually taking away from the value of the video. So the Ektachrome shot looks good, the Provia not so much, but don't blame the Provia, blame me trying to keep the video consistent. I just timed it so that the beach has the withdrawing wave, gives that kind of wavy pattern on the shore below. It's amazing as well, you see how the water has all these colours in, where I think it's the sea taking the chalk from the cliffs gives it that kind of milky colour. You can see it all the way down, but it's really prominent around these rocks at the base of the lighthouse. Yeah, I'm really happy with this. Okay, you're probably wondering why there's only one photo here. By this point, I decided that it was almost wasteful of film to shoot so many duplicates, so I decided to just shoot the Provia for the last 2 shots. This is the Beachy Head Lighthouse, the same one in the previous shot, but this time I'm shooting east rather than west. And this is Provia. So if I was saying that Provia didn't look good in the last shot, here it is doing its job, looking great. I really like the chalky trail in the water beside the lighthouse. And yeah, look at that range of blues. I think this is probably my favorite shot from the roll. We walked a bit further down, so you can see the lighthouse again, but significantly smaller in this shot. And this is just straight out, looking east off into the channel. Obviously the cliffs might be a little bit blown in this shot. I like the composition though, kind of sea on the half and the cliff on the third, the sky with its traily kind of cirrus clouds. I really like the way this came out. And after this, to be honest, we were both feeling a bit sunburnt. We packed up and headed back to London. Well, I hope you enjoyed the trip down to Eastbourne and liked some of the photos. I had a good time shooting it, and I guess conclusion-wise, they are incredibly similar, but because slide film is such a luxury, the increased prices, sort of development-wise and at the cost of purchasing it, means that you kind of want to get the right film all dialed in. Provia tends to be a little bit cooler, Kodak tends to be a little bit warmer. I think that's always been the case. I mean, if you look at sort of 400H and portrait, I think similar things going on there. The thing with the shadow detail on the Provia was interesting. I don't think that the Ektachrome is vastly more contrasty, but it did appear to have a little bit of a steeper roll off into shadow. I'm sure in Lightroom, if I tweak the shadow slider around a bit, maybe I could bring back some of it. But that was a surprising thing about the Provia, was that it did see into the shadows a bit better. Although I think maybe the highlights look a bit better on the Ektachrome, so maybe the exposure shifted. Bear in mind, I did meter once, and there was often a little bit of time between the shots, so that could have been a slight factor. Shooting slide film in sort of noon sun is traditionally difficult because of how deep the shadows can get, but Provia seems to insulate you from that slightly. I will still be shooting the Ektachrome though. I think that I definitely preferred the colour rendition, and with slides it's all about the colour rendition because of how amazing they look as obviously you get the transparencies. I think that having the accurate colours is a big plus. You could always shoot with the warming filter if you can only get Provia. My next video is going to be a look at Kodak Gold in 120, so not a new film, but newly released in medium format, so that could be fun. I know a lot of people have done videos on it, but I've just bought my first box. I'm excited to give it a go, so I'll be making my own. If you want to see that, or if you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, subscribe. I feel like such a YouTuber saying that, but give it a click if you want to see more videos like this. And I guess I'll see you next time.